Hello, Blazers. Welcome to episode 165 of UAB Green and Told, originally released on Monday, December 15th, 2025. This podcast gives us a chance to spotlight the voices of the UAB community. Catch up on previous episodes at alumni.uab.edu/greenandtold, on Spotify or the Apple Podcast app. And if you enjoyed the show, leave a review to help more alums find us. I'm Greg Berry, a UAB alum and Director of Communications in the Office of Alumni Affairs. A boy born in the heart of Manhattan, surrounded by skyscrapers and sirens, who ends up knee-deep in river mud, fighting for clean water in Alabama. It's not the usual path, but today's guest, Charles Scribner, doesn't do usual. Raised in New York City, Charles traded subway stops for stream cleanups. He's always been drawn to service, and as we'll hear, he didn't exactly know what shape it'd take, but he knew it had to matter.
I had always had a sense that I wanted to give back in some way. So I wanted to have some sort of service-based job. But I was all over the place in terms of what direction that would be.
From there, the next step didn't exactly shout. It quietly aligned. And when Charles saw UAB's MPA curriculum, the direction was undeniable.
Just looking at the course offerings for the MPA degree, I thought, this is exactly what I need.
And when it comes to rallying support, he's got a playbook that includes cleats and honors cords.
The UAB football team has had 17 litter cleanups with us just in the last year. The UAB Honors College had 3 back-to-school cleanups with us in 1 week.
Imagine growing up in a city that never sleeps, then finding your life's purpose in the quiet flow of a southern river. Charles Scribner's story winds through the Northeast before landing in Alabama. It's a journey from taxis to tailgates and concrete jungles to conservation. Growing up, Charles hadn't set a foot in Alabama until halfway through college, but that changed quickly and profoundly.
Growing up, I had not visited Alabama until I started dating Liz halfway through college. And so I was aware of the civil rights history specific to Birmingham. And then, of course, I was aware of football. But I really didn't know that much more.
So as a kid growing up in the Big Apple, you never thought you'd move to the Ham. I mean, realistically.
No, I didn't. I didn't really have Alabama on my radar growing up at all. I had no connections to the state. My family has been in New York longer than America has been a country. So I just figured, after college, I'd probably just make my way back to New York like a lot of my classmates were, whether they were originally from New York or not. But then fate intervened and I fell in love with Liz in college, and thank God she's from Birmingham. And so we're here happily ever after.
You've been with Black Warrior Riverkeeper for 2 decades now. What got you involved in that realm? Because your background is history.
Right. So I was a history major. I declared that my second year at Princeton. Love history. Still really appreciate it. And now being on the board of the College of Arts and Sciences, I'm grateful that UAB has such a strong history program as well, because I think it really helps you consider sources, for one thing, synthesize your thoughts, obviously researching and writing, and really helping discern which information is important, which isn't important, which might actually be misleading. And then also, take that information and turn it into a story for people that's useful. But about halfway through college, I was thinking about, what am I going to do next? And I probably wasn't going to become a historian or a history professor. So I was having a bit of a crisis of what next. Most of my colleagues seemed to be heading in the direction of Wall Street. I had always had a sense that I wanted to give back in some way. So I wanted to have some sort of service-based job. But I was all over the place in terms of what direction that would be. I was thinking in terms of the military or maybe the Peace Corps. And there's obviously a pretty wide range between those two.
Yeah.
And I was telling this to my parents over a break and junior year of college. And my mom very wisely said, well, you've always been interested in the environment. And just backing up a little bit, yes, that she was right. I had always been interested in the environment, but I never knew of environmental jobs. I never really looked into that. I kind of figured that environmentalists were either militant tree huggers, which I wasn't, and I'm still not, or scientists, which, total respect to science, but that's just that's not my expertise or my background. But so I was just thinking, yeah, the environment is really important to me. And I always had this sense, from my religious upbringing, that we need to love our neighbors. And I felt like a very efficient and effective way to love our neighbors is to protect the environment, because every single one of our neighbors needs clean water and clean air to survive and thrive. But I didn't think of it as a career. I kind of figured that, once I went to Wall Street or whatever I would do after Princeton and, made millions on Wall Street or in some other form of business, I would donate to environmental charities, but I never thought of it as a job. But my mom continued to say, there was a book recently published about a local organization called Riverkeeper cleaning up the Hudson River, which was our hometown river in New York. But not only cleaning up the Hudson, but their incredible success of turning around that river's fortunes, not only for the wildlife in it, but also for the people living along it and that enjoyed it. That victory over the decades, starting in the 60s and through the 80s into the present, inspired other people on other waterways across America and now across the world to start riverkeeper organizations or waterkeeper organizations to protect their own bodies of water. And so she said, maybe you should read that book and just see if it gives you any ideas. And I read that book that weekend while I was staying with my parents, and it absolutely changed my life. It was called The River Keepers. And I contacted the author after that, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who at the time was the chief prosecuting attorney for Hudson Riverkeeper and the president of Waterkeeper Alliance, which is the global movement that Hudson Riverkeeper's success spawned. And I asked if I could be a volunteer intern that summer, and my application was accepted. So I had an internship at Hudson Riverkeeper, absolutely loved it. It was a very diverse movement in terms of the different walks of life of people that were involved in it. So, for example, yes, there were scientists, and yes, there were professional environmentalists, but there were also everything from lawyers to fishermen to real estate developers to civil rights activists. I mean, you name it. And so I felt like, well, I never knew that there would be a niche for me in the environmental movement, but there's clearly actually a niche for just about anyone. Around 2004, when I was working on my senior thesis, I actually had occasion to interview some of the folks at Black Warrior Riverkeeper for a case study. I wanted to see how waterkeepers were doing in a place like Alabama. And so I got to interview some of the staff, including the Riverkeeper, the staff Riverkeeper at the time, Nelson Brook. And to this day, he has been our staff Riverkeeper. So I now work with Nelson, who I interviewed. They hired me right out of college, right after I graduated. I immediately moved to Birmingham and started working as director of development for Black Warrior Riverkeeper, and then became executive director in 2010.
The differences between the Hudson and the Black Warrior River have to be considerable, because you're talking about two totally different areas of the country, and one's highly, highly urban. Birmingham's urban,
Right.
but it's nothing like New York City. What surprised
Right.
you the most moving down here and shifting rivers a little bit?
Well, one of the things that I love about the waterkeeper movement in general is that all of these different watersheds are dramatically different, as well as the politics and the demographics and the interests, recreational interests even of the people around them. So definitely the Hudson and the Black Warrior watersheds are really different. And so I think to one extent, that's why I really love the waterkeeper movement, because all of these 300 different waterkeepers around the world have their own grassroots credibility that comes from being a local independent nonprofit. So while we are part of Waterkeeper Alliance, which is headquartered in New York City, they're not telling us what to do. They're not our boss. So they're more of a resource for us. If we have a fundraising question or a science question, or we encounter a pollution problem that maybe we had never seen before, but some other waterkeeper had, they can connect us really efficiently with experts that are like-minded to us who can help us out. So they're a tremendous resource for us. And yet we maintain that credibility that comes with being a local group, grassroots, funded locally, having our own local staff and board and focus area. I would be grateful and blessed to work for any waterkeeper organization in the world. But to be able to do this work in Birmingham and in Alabama where we're number one in freshwater biodiversity, and we also have a really outdoorsy population.
Hmm.
You know, the people of Alabama fish and swim. These are great American traditions, and they're particularly strong in Alabama. So it's also a hot state. So we like to cool off in our lakes and rivers and creeks. And we want people to be able to enjoy those activities without worrying about it. So we want the water to be clean enough to swim. We want people to be able to tap into this incredible tradition of catching a fish and bringing it home and eating it.
Your Black Warrior Riverkeeper journey started as soon as you moved to Alabama after college. You waited a little bit before you started your UAB story to get your MPA. What went into the decision to get that degree, and ultimately, why UAB? Was it just a matter of convenience?
Yeah, I became executive director in 2010 after 5 years as director of development. And by that point, I definitely knew that I loved the Waterkeeper movement. I wasn't looking to get a graduate degree necessarily as a career stepping stone. You know, at Princeton, I got my bachelor's degree in history, as you said, but I also got a certificate in environmental studies. So I had taken some courses about environmentalism, you know, policy, science, politics, geology, even. And those were really useful classes in terms of understanding the environment. But what I realized once you're running a nonprofit organization is that's very different from just being passionate or even being knowledgeable about the subject matter. So I definitely had the passion. I'm still here after 20 years. And I had some knowledge of the local issues because of first studying it in my thesis and then working here. But once you're running a nonprofit, it's kind of like running a small business. I
Sure.
mean, except that you have to balance two bottom lines. So in a small business or a large business, obviously you have to be attentive to the bottom line, the income versus expenses.
Hmm.
With a nonprofit, you also have to do that, but then you also have to balance that with your mission. In our case, Black Warrior Riverkeeper's mission is to protect and restore the Black Warrior River and its tributaries. And there's so much sort of non-environmental work that goes into running a nonprofit like this, whether it's budgeting, strategic planning, human resources, insurance, fundraising, so many different things. And so I started thinking about, well, how do I get expertise in those areas? And I found out through some of my colleagues, particularly my friend Cindy Lowry, who is was and still is the executive director of our friends over at Alabama Rivers Alliance. She got her master's in public administration from UAB. And so I asked her about the program, and she was very complimentary about it. And I was also aware of a lot of really noteworthy alumni outside the environmental movement, but who were leaders of nonprofits or government entities throughout Alabama that had gotten their MPA degrees. So I looked on the website and just looking at the course offerings for the MPA degree, I thought this is exactly what I need because these were all topics that weren't covered by my really enjoyable environmental studies certificate at Princeton. These were things like budgeting, nonprofit marketing, leadership styles, HR, just all these areas a nonprofit financial management, all these areas that I had not studied scholastically. So I started out just kind of want to dip my toes in because again, I was already working full time. I was married and I wasn't looking to move. And so I thought, well, I'm just gonna ease my way into this. So the MPA program actually has something called the Graduate Certificate in Nonprofit Management. So I started taking those classes while working full time at Black Warrior Riverkeeper. And one of the classes was called Nonprofit Management by Ellen Grady, who at the time was the vice president of the United Way. And that class was just so amazing that I just decided, you know what, these courses are counting towards an MPA and I'm learning so much. I will continue on and get the full MPA. And I learned a lot from the courses in the MPA program, but also the alumni connections that continue have just been so incredibly valuable.
For some reason, it seems like the MPA cohorts tend to be a lot closer than a lot of other students. Why is that? What goes into that? Because it kind of becomes family and
Yeah.
additional resources to use.
I think that there's a lot of like-mindedness among MPA program, and I don't mean necessarily in terms of, political orientation or anything like that. I mean, in terms of the fact that these are people that have decided that they want to focus on public administration, meaning, public service in some
Yep.
way. So it's a really great degree if you want to run a nonprofit organization or run a government agency. Most of the people in the program from a really diverse age range
Mhm.
were already working at some level in nonprofit or government. And so they're already giving back. And then they're trying to learn how to do that on an even better level. So I think that the MPA program just draws people that really are interested in what's going on in their community or their state and how can they make it better. This focus really translated to very robust board meetings in the MPA program because when you have a bunch of people coming together that are already being trained to form committees, form new organizations, it was just really funny. Like to be the president of the MPA Alumni Society, I would have an agenda going into the board meeting. But then, and we would follow that agenda, but then all these other MPAs at the table would all have great ideas, way better than any ideas I had put on the sheet going into it for new committees and new initiatives. So, for example, we started a mentorship committee where alumni from the MPA program who were leaders in various local agencies would then mentor current students in the MPA program. So that was great. That was just something that was spontaneously started in one of our meetings.
Your full-time job is serving. You have served on these boards as well through the College of Arts and Sciences and MPA board. Why serve in that capacity as well?
I just feel like there's so many divisions right now being there's so many forces that are putting people into different factions, whether those factions are ethnic or religious or political or even age-based or location-based. And I wanted to focus on opportunities for me to serve and to create opportunities for other people to serve that transcended those divisions. So, for example, the environment, like I said, is for everyone. Everybody needs clean water to survive and thrive. Most every single person that either lives in or visits the Black Warrior River watershed is mostly made out of water. So regardless of if we look different or if we believe different things, we are mostly water. And so I really wanted to cut through the divisions and help everyone and also create opportunities for everyone to serve. So that's why back in 2020, Black Warrior Riverkeeper, we started a volunteer litter cleanups program because we realized that, first of all, ecologically speaking, litter, it is a huge impact, especially now that we know more about microplastics and how bad they are for wildlife habitat and for public health. But also, amidst all our political divisions, I have noticed that people tend to hate litter just about equally. So, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, nobody wants to live in a community that's strewn with litter or see a waterway that has a bunch of litter in it. And so we've had an incredibly diverse set of partners get involved in our cleanups. I mean, whether you're talking about churches, synagogues, mosques, for-profit businesses, nonprofits, government agencies, sports teams. I mean, the UAB football team has had 17 litter cleanups with us just in the last year. The UAB Honors College had 3 back-to-school cleanups with us in 1 week in 2025. It's been really inspiring to see so many different people from such different backgrounds coming together on our litter cleanups. And so recently, after launching the program in 2020, we recently removed our 125,000th pound of trash from the Black Warrior watershed. And that's a significant ecological impact that we're proud of. But I'm actually more proud of the number of volunteers that have gotten involved and the number of different new partnerships that started at our litter cleanups, but are now working with us in other ways. We had a number of big donors to Black Warrior Riverkeeper that we appreciate, and we had their names and addresses, and the football players wrote handwritten thank you notes to those donors, thanking them for protecting the Black Warrior River watershed where those football players practice and compete. And you are what you eat, well, you also are what you drink. So
Yeah.
if we're mostly water and they need to rehydrate, then they're getting water from our watershed. So they thanked our donors for making them healthier people and healthier football players in our watershed. But they also thank them for supporting us because we've provided community service opportunities to the team. It was a really great synergy to see that happen and to have them writing handwritten notes, which is kind of a lost art anyway.
What's it like seeing the Black Warrior Riverkeeper logo on a shoe worn by UAB football players on the field?
Yeah, that was part of it was the hashtag My Cause My Shoe series, and it's really inspiring to see that an entity as at face value is not an environmental organization, right? I mean, a football team or even a lot of the other entities that we work with are non-traditional partners for an environmental organization. But again, when you look at, okay, well, what unites us all? We're all mostly water. Then they do need to be involved in that. I think everyone needs to be involved in environmental work. And so that's part of the message that I'm spreading. And so it's really exciting to see non-traditional partners giving back to us and giving back to the community by making clean water a priority. And I hope it's a priority for everyone, but I'm realistic. I know that there are a lot of other things pulling at our attention, and I get it. I've got four little kids and other interests, and we all have we have day jobs, we have other bills to pay, but at the end of the day, literally, we need clean water to survive. And so I'm hoping to give people easy opportunities, whether it's just involvement in a litter cleanup here or there, or donating, or even reporting pollution to us so that our riverkeeper, Nelson Brook, can go investigate that. And then our staff scientist, John Kinney, who again graduated from UAB engineering, he can devise solutions to pollution problems.
Besides still serving UAB on various boards, you and your wife give back financially. Why do you think it's important to give back as an alumnus of this university?
Partly out of gratitude that my wife and I just had such a great experience at UAB that we want to say thank you. And then it's partly paying it forward because we realized that, well, I mean, UAB, first of all, is just huge and it's growing. I think it's the largest employer in the state of Alabama, but also enrollment is growing at grad school and undergrad. And so we realized that there's going to be countless generations of future students that need things like financial aid, that need incredible facilities, top-notch faculty and staff. And UAB provides that, but we want UAB to be able to continue to provide that. So in our small way, if we can make a contribution towards that, that's paying it forward. And then also it's partly out of gratitude, not only for our past academic experience, but in the community today. We've got so many friends, or in my case, colleagues in the environmental movement that are part of UAB one way or another. I mean, even just so recently, one of the newest members of our board of directors at Black Warrior Riverkeeper is Dr. Mercy Allah, who is a professor in the UAB School of Public Health. So that's just one of so many ways that UAB is helping our community, or whether it's our kids being born at the hospital, just the amount of research that's being done. And then how many of our friends, even just friends at church or in Bible study, happen to be employed at UAB. And I believe that the school was ranked America's #1 large employer by Forbes magazine a couple of years ago. This is all just getting started because also a couple of years ago, I believe UAB celebrated its 50th anniversary. I mean, that's a great milestone, but that's not old. So, this idea of a national alumni society, the momentum is just starting. I think I've only met 2 UAB students that I knew of whose parents went to UAB, like 2 legacy students, but that's going to start happening.
That's Charles Scribner, a 2015 MPA graduate from the College of Arts and Sciences. Today, he's the executive director of Black Warrior Riverkeeper. And as someone who channels passion into purpose and turns volunteers into champions, he has a great idea of what it means to be a Blazer.
I think it means being part of a community that is already close-knit and strong, but has incredible upward trajectory, or at least potential in that regard. So let's see what happens, and let's be the architects of that happening together. So I'm grateful for your job, Greg, because you're connecting and supporting the people that would like to get involved in the alumni network. it's a local phenomenon that's really powerful. I mean, being the largest employer in Alabama is a really important thing for our state's economy, and especially for our city and county's economy. But it's also in the service of the nation and of the world. I mean, we've got UAB graduates going out as doctors and researchers and nonprofit leaders and government leaders, business leaders that are making huge impacts. And it's only just starting because, again, what is it, 53 years of existence. So if I were going to summarize being a Blazer in one word, it would be exciting, because I can't wait to see what the future holds.
That's another episode of UAB Green and Told in the books. Catch up on past episodes at alumni.uab.edu/green and told, on Spotify or the Apple Podcast app. If you have a guest idea, send it our way at greenandtold@uab.edu. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay connected with all things UAB alumni. Thanks for listening, and as always, go Blazers.